When it comes to old cars, even when they're not a particularly famous classic, it can be very questionable to modify them. So when you find one like this that's had any modifications made to it, it can elicit a little bit of shock, sometimes even a bit of anger in some people. This car is a Lamborghini Urraco. Originally there was only 800 of these made, but now there are far less of them than that. You need to remember that a lot of these cars have not had a good life, and they're old. So a lot of them end up in pretty sorry states. So when you see something like this that's been revived, sometimes I think that's better if it's not totally original and on the road than if it was just left alone. Personally, I don't mind all of the aesthetic changes. I like the wheel arches. They're large and they give it a much more pronounced stance than what a Urraco typically has. The wheels are nice as well. I like the pattern and they're much wider than they were on the car originally. To me, it brings the car much more in line with supercar fare. You also have to remember that this is an Italian car, and despite the owner's best efforts, there are just some things that will always be Italian. Despite the owner's best efforts, he assures me that the air conditioning still doesn't work. Not everything that's been modified in this car though has been done just for looks. The suspension has been rebuilt, the exhaust has been replaced, and the entire engine has been rebuilt. So it does beg the question, how does it drive? This is a car that is equal measures love and fear. There are things about this car that are just amazing. I mean, the soundtrack from that small displacement, high revving V8 is just fantastic. You don't need a radio. It gives you so much enjoyment while you're on the road. And every now and again, if you're really nice to it, it'll treat you with a special little flame out the tailpipe. And I love the steering on this car. It's almost hard to put it into words how much better it is than a modern car in the way that it feels. It feels light while you're moving, but you get so much feedback from the road as well. You feel like your arms have just extended through the dashboard and you're holding the wheels directly. Now, I'm not saying it's bad that steering's changed, because it's a lot easier to drive now. This is a lot of work, but you can't beat this kind of old steering for the way that the road interacts with you. No matter what you do though, this car still keeps reminding you that it's Italian. It is a lot of work to change gear. It takes a lot of time as well to get from gear to gear, so it's not a car that you can drive fast. If you try and drive it fast, it won't be fun. You'll just end up battling with the gears all the time and you'll have no control over the vehicle. The best way to enjoy this car is to just get it in a gear where you can hear the engine and the revs are nice, and just drive. Enjoy the steering. Another thing that's very Italian is the brakes. It's almost as if they were put on as an afterthought. They made the car go, they made it handle and steer fantastically, and then someone just piped up and said, I think we need to make this car stop. To call them brakes is almost a little unfair to what brakes really are. There's no servo assist, it takes a huge amount of force to make them do anything, and the feeling is totally numb. Whenever you press it, you're more or less praying that you're pressing it the right amount rather than having any idea of whether or not you're going to stop. For this reason, the owner wants to upgrade the brakes. And I know that will upset some people because it'll be another part of this car which is no longer original. But on the other hand, being able to stop the car in a timely fashion is sort of important. As beautiful as the engine sounds, it's actually a lot of work to get that noise out of it. The accelerator pedal has this really long cable and has a lot of drag, so there's a lot of effort to press it in. And then the pivot for the accelerator pedal is in a really awkward spot, so you've got to kind of hover your foot off the floor and just kind of hold it above the ground so that you can press the pedal and make it do something. It's a lot of work, but man, it's so satisfying when you get it right. Despite being scared for my life every time I touch the brakes, I've had a lot of fun driving this car. It sounds amazing, it feels amazing, and I'm glad that the car has been brought back to life. Sure, it's not perfect, but it's in a lot better order than it ever used to be, having been restored, and a lot of the issues that these kinds of cars have been resolved, such as electrical issues. Now, the lights work. The paint's been restored, the interior's been restored, and sure, the back seats are just kind of there for show, but you know, it's a fully working Lamborghini Urraco, and there's not a whole lot of them about. The fact that this car has been restored and modified to a lot of people would detract from its value. If you have that particular attitude, I do have to ask you, what do you think would be a worse situation? A car that's been modified and fixed and being used regularly and enjoyed, or a car that's totally original, sitting in some museum somewhere that no one can use?